You don't belong here, and we both know it. The spotlight cuts through the windshield like a blade. The woman behind the wheel keeps both hands visible on the steering wheel. Her fingers do not tremble. The officer's hand is already on his holster. Out of the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. Now. She opens the door slowly, deliberately, every movement controlled. The officer does not know that the woman he is about to handcuff has the authority to end his career with a single phone call. He does not know that her encrypted device is transmitting every word to a federal server 3,000 miles away. He only sees what he wants to see. A black woman, an expensive neighborhood, a threat that needs handling. That miscalculation will cost him everything. If you're watching this, hit subscribe right now, because what happens next will shock you. 37 minutes earlier, the radio in Unit Charlie 19 had crackled with the call that would set everything in motion. Unit Charlie 19, dispatch. Complainant Margot Kirby, 4127 Colony Road, Myers Park, reports suspicious black female, mid-30s, dark jacket, walking dog in neighborhood. Complainant states subject has been casing houses for approximately 40 minutes. No weapon observed. No crime in progress. Respond. Code 2. No weapon. No crime. Just 4 words that transformed a woman walking her dog into a problem requiring police intervention. Suspicious black female. Officer Trent Billups heard the call and smiled. The kind of smile that comes from finding exactly what you were looking for. He hit the lights and accelerated. Kezia Oduya had spotted the patrol car 3 blocks before it reached her. Headlights off, moving slow, hunting pattern. She continued walking, letting her Labrador sniff at a hedge along the sidewalk. Normal, natural, nothing to hide. The cruiser pulled alongside her. The spotlight snapped on, turning night into interrogation. "Ma'am, stop right there." She stopped, turned slowly, kept her hands visible at her sides. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Billups stepped out of the vehicle. 6'2", 200 pounds, the kind of build that came from high school football and a gym membership he still used to intimidate. His hand rested near his weapon as he approached. "What are you doing out here?" "Walking my dog? At 9 p.m. in this neighborhood?" She did not answer. The question was not a question. It was an accusation dressed in procedural clothing. Billups stepped closer. His flashlight beam hit her face, forcing her to squint against the glare. "ID, now." "Am I being detained?" His jaw tightened. That was the question people like her were not supposed to ask. The question that broke the script. The question that required an actual reason instead of just a feeling. "I said ID. Don't make me repeat myself." She reached toward her jacket pocket. Slow. Telegraphed. "My wallet is in my left pocket. I'm reaching for it now." Real slow. She produced the wallet. Billups snatched it from her hand before she could open it, rifling through the contents with aggressive fingers. Driver's license, credit cards, a white card with no name, just a series of numbers. "What's this?" "A business card." "For what business?" "No name, no company, just numbers." "I'm not required to explain my personal belongings." Billups threw the wallet to the ground. Cards and papers scattered across the wet asphalt. Her driver's license landed face down in a puddle. "Hands on the hood, now." "On what grounds?" "I've committed no crime. You have no reasonable suspicion of any specific offense." He grabbed her arm before she finished speaking, spun her around, slammed her against the hood of his cruiser hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. The metal was cold through her jacket. "I said hands on the hood." She placed her palms flat against the surface, spread, compliant, as if walking a dog in a wealthy neighborhood was a crime requiring punishment. Biscuit barked and pulled at his leash, trying to reach his owner. "Control your animal or I will." "He's scared. He won't hurt." Billups kicked toward the dog. Biscuit yelped and scrambled backward, the leash slipping from Kezia's hand in the chaos. She did not react, did not turn her head, did not cry out, because she knew that any response would become justification. Resisting arrest, threatening an officer, aggressive behavior. She had read hundreds of reports about people who did not survive those accusations. His hands began searching her jacket pockets. From the second-floor window of 4127 Colony Road, Margot Kirby watched with a glass of Cabernet in her hand. She had lived in Myers Park for 31 years, had watched the neighborhood change, had seen families come and go, had appointed herself the unofficial guardian of these tree-lined streets. She had called 911 7 times in the past 2 years about suspicious individuals, all black, all doing nothing illegal, all handled by police who arrived, questioned, and eventually released their targets without charges. No one had ever told her to stop calling. No one had ever suggested that her fears were the problem rather than the people she feared. Tonight, watching the officer slam that woman against his car, Margot felt vindicated. See, she thought, I was right. Look at how she's resisting. The woman on the hood of the cruiser was not resisting anything. Billups found the device in her inner jacket pocket. Small, rectangular, heavier than a phone. An antenna stub protruding from one end. 3 LED lights blinking green in sequence. What the hell is this? That's personal property. He turned it over in his hands, examining it under his flashlight. No brand markings. No visible buttons except for 3 recessed switches. Military-grade construction. This doesn't look personal. This looks like surveillance equipment. I'd recommend you put that back. He laughed. The sound was ugly in the quiet neighborhood. You'd recommend? Lady, you're not in a position to recommend anything. He held up the device. What is this? You running some kind of operation out here? Casing houses for a robbery crew? I'm not going to answer questions without an attorney present. Attorney, right. He pocketed the device. Turn around. You're being detained for investigation. Investigation of what specific crime? Possession of suspicious equipment, trespassing, whatever else I find. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Cold metal biting into skin. A second patrol car pulled up. Officer Diana Martinez, badge 5523, stepped out and surveyed the scene with the careful eyes of someone who had seen too many of these encounters go wrong. Billups, what do we have? Suspicious individual. Found some kind of surveillance device on her, maybe terrorism-related. Martinez looked at the woman in handcuffs, calm, composed. Not the profile of someone running a terror cell. Did you run her ID? About to. Maybe do that first, before we escalate? Billups shot her a look that carried a clear message. Know your place. Martinez had been on the force 8 months. He had been here 6 years. Rank had privileges. He walked back to his cruiser and punched in the information from the driver's license he had retrieved from the puddle. The computer returned results in seconds. Kazia Oduya, age 36. Address listed as a short-term rental in South End. No criminal record, no warrants, no flags. Clean. Martinez watched him read the screen, watched his jaw tighten as the computer failed to confirm his assumptions. What did it come back? Clean. The word came out like it tasted bad. But that device isn't civilian tech. Something's off here. Maybe she's security, private investigator, lots of explanations that don't involve terrorism. Or maybe her record is clean because she hasn't been caught yet. He walked back to where Kezia stood, hands cuffed behind her back, posture straight, face revealing nothing. Your record came back clean, but that doesn't explain what you're doing in this neighborhood at night with military-grade surveillance equipment. She said nothing. Who do you work for? Silence. I asked you a question. And I told you I'm not answering questions without an attorney. Billups stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. You think you're smart? You think keeping quiet makes you look innocent? He grabbed her shoulder and spun her to face him. Let me tell you something. I've been doing this a long time. I know what suspicious looks like. And you? Walking around a neighborhood like this, at night, with that equipment? His finger jabbed toward her face. You're suspicious. And I'm going to find out exactly what you're up to. From down the street, Gerald Forsythe emerged from his house. 67 years old, retired attorney, the only resident of Myers Park who had ever donated to the local NAACP chapter. "Officers, what's going on here?" Billups turned, irritation flashing across his face. "Sir, please return to your residence. This is police business." "I can see that. I'm asking what the woman did wrong." "That's under investigation. Go back inside." "Investigation of what? I've been watching from my window. She was walking a dog. That's not a crime." Margot's voice cut through the night from her porch. "Gerald, stay out of this. You don't know what she was doing." "Neither do you, Margot. You just see what you want to see." "I saw her circling the block for 40 minutes, looking at houses, taking notes or something on that device." Kezia finally spoke. Her voice carried across the distance, clear and calm. "I was photographing a bird. There's a red-tailed hawk that nests in the oak tree at the end of Colony Road. I've been documenting its behavior for several weeks." Margot's face reddened. "That's ridiculous. Who photographs birds at night?" "The hawk hunts at dusk. The lighting is best just after sunset." She turned to look directly at Margot. "You're welcome to check my photo library. 743 images of local wildlife, all time-stamped, all geotagged." Billups cut in before the exchange could continue. "Enough. We're taking you in for questioning." "On what charge?" "Suspicion of criminal surveillance, possession of illegal electronic equipment." "That device is not illegal, and I have not surveilled anything except birds." "That's for the detectives to determine. Martinez, help me get her in the car." Martinez hesitated. Every instinct she had developed in 8 months of patrol was screaming that this was wrong, that they were making a mistake, that this woman was not what Billups assumed her to be. But Billups was senior. Billups had 6 years. Billups would write the report, and if she contradicted him, she would face consequences that could derail her career before it started. She moved to assist. The back door of the cruiser opened. Kezia was guided inside, her head pushed down by Billups's hand with more force than necessary. She hit the plastic seat hard, her cuffed hands making it impossible to brace herself. Biscuit, still loose, ran toward the car, barking frantically at the door that now separated him from his owner. "What about the dog?" Martinez asked. "Animal control can pick it up." "That could take hours. It'll freeze out here." Billups shrugged. "Not my problem." Forsythe stepped forward. "I'll take the dog. Keep it safe until this gets sorted out." Billups looked at him with undisguised contempt, but nodded. "Fine, just keep it off the street." Forsythe approached slowly, speaking softly to the frightened Labrador until it allowed him to pick up the leash. The dog whimpered, straining toward the patrol car. "It's okay, boy. It's okay." From inside the car, through the reinforced glass, Kezia watched. Her face remained impassive, but something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, something closer to calculation. She turned her head slightly, scanning the street, noted the Ring doorbell on Forsythe's porch, the Tesla parked in the driveway across the street, its sentry mode light blinking steadily, the multiple windows where curtains had been pushed aside by curious neighbors, evidence, multiple sources, independent documentation. If Billups had any idea how thoroughly he was being recorded from how many angles, he might have reconsidered his approach. But he did not know, and he would not ask. The cruiser pulled away from Colony Road, carrying its prisoner toward the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department headquarters on East Trade Street. In the back seat, hands cuffed behind her, Keziah Oduya began to count. Counting was a technique she had learned years ago, in situations far more dangerous than this one. It kept the mind sharp. It measured time. It provided data. 47 seconds from Colony Road to the stop sign at Queens Road. 93 seconds from Queens to the turn onto Providence. The route was being logged. The timing recorded. Not by her consciously, but by the device that Billups had taken from her pocket. The device that was still transmitting despite being in his possession, still pinging its encrypted signal to a satellite that relayed it to servers in Arlington, Virginia. Every word spoken in this car was being captured, every moment documented. The case against Officer Trent Billups was building itself with every passing second, and he had no idea. The drive to the station took 14 minutes. Billups said nothing for the first 12, focused on the road, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at his silent prisoner. Finally he spoke. "You know what I think? I think you're working for someone, gathering intelligence on these houses, maybe for a robbery ring, maybe for something worse." She did not respond. "The silent treatment doesn't work on me. I've broken harder people than you." Still nothing. "You think you're smart. You think that fancy equipment and your careful words make you special." He caught her eye in the mirror. "They don't. In here, you're just another suspect, and suspects talk eventually. They all do." The station appeared ahead. Fluorescent lights. Patrol cars parked in neat rows. The machinery of local law enforcement, grinding on through another night. Billups pulled into the intake bay and killed the engine. "Last chance. Tell me who you work for, and this goes easier." She met his eyes in the mirror. For the first time since he had detained her, she smiled. "I would strongly recommend you contact the State Department Operations Center before processing me further. Verification code, Meridian 7 Kilo. He laughed. "State Department? Lady, you're delusional." "Your call, officer. But when this is over, remember that I gave you the chance to verify." He opened her door and hauled her out by the arm. "Move." This story is about to take a turn you won't believe. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. The intake area of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in unflattering shades of yellow-green. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named Patterson, looked up as Billups escorted his prisoner through the doors. "What do we have?" "Suspicious individual. Found with surveillance equipment in Myers Park. Possible terrorism angle." Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Terrorism? In Myers Park? The equipment isn't civilian. I've never seen anything like it." He pulled the device from his pocket and placed it on the counter. Patterson examined it with the careful disinterest of someone who had processed thousands of pieces of evidence over 23 years. "Looks military. You call anyone about this?" "About to. I want her booked first." "On what charge?" "Suspicion of criminal surveillance. We can add more once we figure out what that thing is." Patterson looked at Kezia, who stood with perfect posture despite the handcuffs, her face revealing nothing. "She give you any trouble?" "Won't talk without a lawyer. Keeps making weird demands about calling the State Department." "State Department?" Patterson's eyebrows rose further. "That's a new one. She's either crazy or running a con. Either way, she's not walking out of here tonight." The booking process began. Fingerprints, photographs, personal effects logged and sealed in evidence bags. Kezia cooperated with every procedure, speaking only to confirm her name and address when required by law. The device was tagged and sent to evidence lockup, where it would wait for analysis that would never correctly identify its purpose. Processing complete, Billups escorted her to holding room 3B. A concrete box with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. The red recording light was dark. "Have a seat, someone will be with you shortly." "The camera isn't recording." He paused at the door. "Excuse me?" "The camera. The recording light is off. I'm documenting that you're placing me in an unmonitored holding room." His smile returned, but it was thinner now, more strained. "Lady, you're in no position to document anything." The door closed. The lock engaged. Kezia sat in the metal chair and began to count again. Seconds. Minutes. Building the timeline that would matter later, when lawyers and judges and federal investigators asked exactly how long she had been held without access to counsel, without being charged, without being allowed her legal phone call. 11 minutes. 23 minutes. 41 minutes. The door remained closed. At the 54-minute mark, it finally opened. Detective Nolan Sutter walked in carrying a manila folder and a cup of coffee. 47 years old, graying at the temples, with the weathered face of a man who had seen too much and stopped caring about most of it. He sat down across from her and opened the folder with practiced casualness. "Ms. Oduya, I'm Detective Sutter. I'd like to ask you a few questions. I've requested an attorney. Until one is present, I won't be answering questions." "That's your right, but I should tell you, we ran your name through some additional databases. Interesting results." She said nothing. 14 months of apartment rentals in South End. No stable employment on record. Cash deposits into your bank account from sources we can't identify. He flipped a page. "And now we find you in Myers Park with surveillance equipment that our tech people say they've never seen before." He leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I think is happening. Someone's running an operation out of Charlotte, gathering intelligence on wealthy neighborhoods, maybe planning something, maybe already executing." He tapped the folder. "And you're part of it. I've requested an attorney. You keep saying that, but here's the thing. We can hold you for 48 hours before we have to charge you with anything. That's a lot of time to sit in a cell while we dig into your background." He leaned forward, and something shifted in his eyes. Something that looked less like routine interrogation and more like personal investment. "Or you can help yourself by telling me who you work for, what the target is, who your contacts are." Kezia studied his face, the micro-expressions, the slight tension around his eyes, the way his fingers tapped against the table just a fraction too fast. He was nervous, not the nervousness of a detective pushing a suspect, the nervousness of a man who was afraid of what she might know. "Detective Sutter, badge 3847, 22 years on the force, Vice Division for the past 11. His tapping stopped. "Divorced twice. Owns a house in Dilworth that's valued at $420,000, which is interesting given your salary history." She tilted her head slightly. "You've taken 3 trips to the Cayman Islands in the past 18 months, all paid for in cash." The color drained from his face. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot of things, Detective. For example, I know that the house at 4891 Colony Road, 2 blocks from where I was arrested tonight, has seen 47 different visitors in the past 14 months. I know that those visitors enter through the back gate, stay an average of 23 minutes, and leave without ever turning on the front lights." She leaned forward, matching his earlier posture. "I know that you've been paid $5,000 a month to ensure that house never receives police attention. I know the payments come through a shell company registered in Delaware. And I know that you recognized my face the moment you walked through that door." Sutter stood up so fast his chair scraped against the concrete floor. "Who are you?" "Someone you should not have allowed to be brought here. Someone who was much more useful to you on the outside, where I couldn't be connected to whatever's about to happen." His hand trembled as he reached for the door handle. "You're bluffing. You don't know anything. The verification code is Meridian 7 Kilo. If you call the State Department Operations Center and give them that code, they will tell you exactly how badly you've miscalculated tonight." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he yanked the door open and stepped through, slamming it behind him. Kezia resumed counting. In the hallway outside holding room 3B, Nolan Sutter pressed his back against the wall and tried to control his breathing. His heart was racing. His palms were slick with sweat. She knew. She knew everything. 14 months of careful work protecting that house, taking the money, looking the other way. And now this woman who was supposed to be a random suspicious person call, an easy booking, a nothing case, was sitting in his interrogation room describing his offshore accounts like she had been reading his bank statements. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had hoped never to use. It rang twice before a voice answered. Male, accented, cold. "You were told never to call this number directly. We have a problem. A woman was arrested tonight in Myers Park. She knows about the operation. She knows about me." Silence on the line. Then, "Describe her." "Black female, mid-30s, goes by Kezia Oduya. She was carrying some kind of encrypted device, military grade. Our tech people have never seen anything like it. More silence. Longer this time. Where is she now? Holding room at the station. I was interrogating her when she started talking about the house, the visitors, my payments. She knows everything. How much has she told others? I don't know. She demanded a lawyer immediately. Hasn't said anything official on record. Then make sure she doesn't. Sutter's blood went cold. What do you mean? I mean this is your problem, Detective. You assured us local law enforcement was under control. You guaranteed there would be no interference, and now you're telling me a federal agent is sitting in your police station with documentation of everything we've built. Federal agent? How do you know she's... The device, the encryption protocols, the verification code she gave you. The voice was ice. She's Diplomatic Security Service, State Department's law enforcement arm. If she's here, it means Washington knows about the operation. What do I do? Whatever you have to. Lose the device, lose the records, and make sure that woman is not in a position to testify about anything. The line went dead. Sutter stared at his phone, his mind racing through possibilities and dead ends. He could run, empty his accounts and disappear, but they would find him. The people he worked for had resources that made his police connections look like amateur hour. He could turn himself in, cooperate with federal investigators. But that meant prison. And in prison, people who betrayed the organization had a way of dying in their cells from unexplained causes. Or he could do what the voice suggested. Remove the problem. Make it look like an accident, or a suicide, or a botched escape attempt. His hand was on his weapon before he realized it. He took a breath, removed his hand. Think clearly. The camera in holding room 3B was off. Billups had mentioned that. If she had an accident in there, a fall, a medical emergency, a confrontation that went wrong, there would be no recording. But there would be witnesses, other officers, Desk Sergeant Patterson, Skias, the booking records, unless the records disappeared too. He walked to the evidence locker, badge scanned his way in, and found the bin marked with Kezia Oduya's case number. The device was there, still blinking its green lights, still transmitting its encrypted signal to wherever it was reporting. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, tried to find an off switch. 3 buttons. He pressed them in sequence. The screen flashed. Tamper detected. Initiating secure wipe. 30, 29, 28. He dropped it like it was on fire. The countdown continued. 24, 23, 22. If it wiped, all the evidence of the Meridian operation would be lost. That was good for the organization, but it was also transmitting an alert right now to federal servers. 2. Documenting that someone had tried to tamper with it. An alert that would include his fingerprints, his badge scan entry to the evidence room, the exact timestamp of his interference. 15, 14, 13. He grabbed the device and fumbled with the buttons, trying to stop the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Come on, come on. 5, 4, 3. The screen went dark. The lights stopped blinking. Wipe complete. The device was dead. The evidence was gone. But somewhere in Virginia, a federal analyst was already flagging the tamper alert and reaching for his phone. Sutter stood in the evidence room, holding a brick of dead electronics, and realized he had just made everything infinitely worse. Kezia heard the commotion in the hallway from her holding cell, raised voices, running footsteps, the clatter of equipment being moved. She smiled. The tamper protocol had worked exactly as designed. Sutter, predictable as always, had taken the bait. He had accessed the evidence room, logged by his badge scan. He had handled the device, leaving fingerprints. He had triggered the wipe, which transmitted a final burst of data before shutting down. That burst contained everything. 14 months of surveillance, photographs, audio recordings, financial transaction records. the complete architecture of the network that moved hundreds of women through Charlotte every year, using visa fraud and corruption and the protection of local police officers who looked the other way. Sutter thought he had destroyed the evidence. In reality, he had just provided the final piece, proof that a Charlotte PD detective was actively working to obstruct a federal investigation. The door to her holding cell opened. Billups stood in the doorway, face flushed, hand on his weapon. "What did you do?" "I don't know what you're talking about, officer." "The device. It wiped itself. Sutter says you triggered something." "I've been handcuffed in this room for over an hour." "How could I have triggered anything?" He grabbed her arm and yanked her to her feet. "You're coming with me." "Where?" "Somewhere we can have a conversation without cameras." Her feet skidded on the concrete as he dragged her toward the door. She planted her weight, forcing him to work for every step. "Officer Billups, I'm telling you one more time. Contact the State Department Operations Center. Verification code, Meridian 7 Kilo, before this goes any further." His response was to shove her through the doorway hard enough that she stumbled, only her quick reflexes preventing a fall. Martinez was waiting in the hallway. Her face showed alarm. "Billups, what are you doing?" "Transferring the prisoner." "To where? This isn't procedure." "It is now. Move." "The sergeant hasn't approved any transfer." Billups spun on her, jabbing a finger at her chest. "Listen to me, rookie. You've been on the job 8 months. I've been here 6 years. When I tell you to move, you move. When I tell you to look the other way, you look the other way. That's how this works. That's how this has always worked. And if you don't like it, you can find another career." Martinez stood frozen, caught between fear and conscience. Kezia spoke quietly. "Officer Martinez, badge 5523. Your body camera has been recording this entire exchange. Whatever happens next will be documented. Whatever choices you make will be on that recording forever." Martinez's hand moved unconsciously toward the camera mounted on her chest. Billups saw the movement, his face contorted with rage. "Turn it off." "Billups, I can't just—" "Turn it off or I'll do it for you." "The regulations say—" He reached for her camera. She stepped back, but he was faster, bigger, meaner. His fingers found the power switch and forced it down. "There. Now we're off the record." He turned back to Kezia. "And you're going to tell me exactly what that device was transmitting and to who." "Whom?" The slap came without warning. Open palm. Full force. Her head snapped to the side, blood blooming from her split lip. Martinez gasped. "Billups!" "Shut up." His focus never left Kezia. "I asked you a question." She straightened slowly, turned to face him. Blood dripped from her chin onto the concrete floor. "My name is Kezia Oduya. I am being held without charge. I have requested an attorney multiple times. I am not resisting arrest. I am documenting every action you take." His fist connected with her stomach, doubling her over. "I don't hear an answer." She coughed, fighting for breath, but when she looked up, her eyes held nothing but cold assessment. "You have now committed assault on a federal officer. That's a felony under 18 U.S.C. Section 111. Maximum penalty 10 years. He grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against the wall. "I don't know what game you're playing, but there's no federal anything here. There's just you making up stories, trying to scare me." He squeezed. "I don't scare." Her voice came out strained but steady. 40 seconds. "What?" 35 seconds now, until the asset recovery protocol activates. "What protocol? What are you talking about?" 28 seconds. His grip loosened slightly, uncertainty flickering across his features. "You're bluffing." 22 seconds. "You can let me go and maybe salvage something. Or you can find out what happens when a federal agency loses contact with an asset in hostile custody." "Hostile custody? This is a police station." 15 seconds. His hand dropped from her throat. He stepped back, looking around as if expecting armed soldiers to materialize from the walls. "You're insane." 10 seconds. "Martinez, get Patterson. Tell him we have a situation." Martinez didn't move. She was staring at Kazia with something like recognition dawning in her eyes. 5 seconds. The lights flickered once, then again. Every phone in the building rang simultaneously. Billups spun toward the sound, confusion and fear warring on his face. Martinez was already moving, responding to some instinct that told her everything was about to change. And Kezia Oduya, blood on her face and bruises forming on her throat, allowed herself a small smile. The cavalry was coming. The call that reached Sergeant Patterson's desk came from a number that didn't exist in any public directory. The voice on the other end identified itself as State Department Operations, reference code Meridian 7 Kilo, and demanded to speak with whoever was in charge. Patterson transferred the call to Assistant Chief Bram Lassiter, who was 15 minutes away at a fundraiser dinner and very annoyed at being interrupted. The annoyance lasted approximately 30 seconds. Lassiter arrived at the station at 11:47 p.m. with his tie loosened and his expression murderous. He found Billups in the hallway, Martinez against the wall looking shell-shocked, and Kezia Oduya handcuffed to a bench with blood drying on her chin. "Explain. Now." Billups launched into his version of events. Suspicious individual, surveillance equipment, possible terrorism connection, the usual justifications, the standard phrases designed to make whatever he had done sound reasonable. Lassiter cut him off halfway through. "Did you contact the State Department to verify her claims?" "Sir, she was obviously lying. The story was ridiculous." "Did you contact them?" "No, sir." "So when a detainee gave you a specific verification code and told you to call a specific federal agency, your response was to ignore that and assault her in my hallway?" Billups opened his mouth, closed it. "That blood on her face. Where did it come from?" Silence. "I asked you a question, officer." "She was being uncooperative." "Uncooperative." Lassiter's voice was ice. "And the bruises on her neck?" More silence. "Get out of my sight. Go to interview room 2 and wait there. Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch your phone. Don't even think about leaving this building." Billups hesitated, then walked away. His footsteps echoed down the corridor like countdown beats. Lassiter turned to the woman on the bench. "Ms. Oduya, I'm Assistant Chief Bram Lassiter. I understand there's been a serious misunderstanding tonight." "There's been no misunderstanding. Your officer profiled, detained, assaulted, and attempted to illegally interrogate me. Every step was intentional. That's a matter for internal investigation. Right now, I need to know who you actually are." I gave Officer Billups a verification code. I gave it to Detective Sutter. I gave it to Officer Martinez. No one called to verify. She met his eyes steadily. "You're welcome to be the first." He pulled out his phone and dialed the number that State Department Operations had provided. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. During those 4 minutes, Lassiter's face cycled through several distinct phases: skepticism, confusion, alarm, and finally something that looked very much like fear. He hung up and stared at the woman on the bench as if seeing her for the first time. "Diplomatic Security Service. Special Agent. Top secret security clearance." His voice was barely above a whisper. 14 months undercover investigating a human trafficking network operating in my city." "Correct." "And my officers arrested you, assaulted you, tried to—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Also correct. The State Department is sending someone. They'll be here within the hour." "I'm aware." "They mentioned military assets, said something about asset recovery protocol." "That's standard procedure when an agent is detained by potentially hostile forces." "Potentially hostile." His voice cracked. "Ms. Oduya, this is a police station. We're not hostile forces." She looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Assistant Chief Lassiter, in the past 3 hours I have been detained without cause, searched without warrant, held without charge, denied access to counsel, assaulted twice, and nearly strangled by one of your officers. Detective Sutter attempted to destroy federal evidence and made a phone call to warn the very network I've been investigating." She let that sink in. From my perspective, and from the perspective of the federal government, your police station has been acting exactly like hostile forces." His face went gray. "Sutter? Sutter is involved with... He's been receiving payments for 3 years to protect a house in Myers Park where the network operates. $15,000 a month, routed through shell companies in Delaware and the Caymans." She paused. "I assume you didn't know that, but if you did, this conversation is going to become much more complicated." "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." "Then you have a serious problem in your department, Assistant Chief, and it's about to become very public." Outside, in the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors began to grow louder. The military convoy arrived at 12:23 a.m. 6 Humvees, 1 Black Hawk helicopter, 42 military police in full tactical gear, their vehicles blocking every entrance and exit to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department headquarters. Civilians in the area stopped to stare. Phones came out. Videos began uploading to social media in real time. Colonel Yolanda Vickers stepped out of the lead Humvee and walked toward the station entrance with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew exactly how much power she carried. Lassiter met her at the door. "Colonel, I'm Assistant Chief Bram Lassiter. I want to assure you that this situation is under control and—" "Where is Agent Oduya?" "Inside. She's been secured and—" "Secured how?" "Handcuffed. For her own safety during the—" "Show me." It was not a request. They walked through the station, officers and staff pressing against walls to let them pass. The atmosphere had shifted from routine night shift to something electric, dangerous, uncertain. Vickers saw Keziah before Lassiter could point her out. The blood, the bruises, the handcuffs. Her expression did not change, but something in her posture shifted, a coiling of energy that suggested imminent violence barely contained. "Agent Oduya, are you injured?" "Minor injuries, nothing requiring immediate medical attention." "We have a medic standing by regardless." Vickers turned to Lassiter. "Remove the handcuffs." "Colonel, with respect, this is my jurisdiction and—" "Remove the handcuffs, or I will have my soldiers remove them for you. Your choice, Assistant Chief." Lassiter nodded to a nearby officer who fumbled with his keys and freed Keziah's wrists. She stood, rubbing circulation back into her hands, and faced Vickers. "Colonel, thank you for the rapid response. Standard protocol. When an agent goes dark, we respond with force." Vickers handed her a tablet, "You should see this." Keziah looked at the screen. Her face, already composed, became stone. "How many?" 14 of 23. They started moving within 30 minutes of your arrest. Someone tipped them off." Sutter made a phone call from the hallway. "I couldn't hear the content, but the timing matches." "We have him in custody. FBI picked him up trying to leave through the back entrance." Keziah nodded slowly, processing the loss. 14 months. 23 targets. 9 in custody was better than nothing. But 14 escaped meant the network would rebuild. Different faces, different locations, same horror. 400 women a year. "What about Vasquez and Okonjo-Thompson?" "Private aircraft. Departed Charlotte Douglas at 11:52 p.m. Destination unknown, but likely Caymans or Europe." The kingpins. Gone. Lassiter listened to this exchange with growing horror. Human trafficking, federal investigation. His station used as a hub for obstruction. His officers directly involved in allowing criminals to escape. His career was over. He could feel it ending in real time. "Agent Oduya," his voice was hoarse, "I need you to understand. I had no idea any of this was happening. Sutter, the network, the payments, none of it was known to my office." She looked at him with eyes that held no sympathy. "Then you failed in your fundamental duty to know what was happening in your department. That's not a defense, Assistant Chief. That's an indictment." Vickers spoke into her radio. "Bring in the legal team. We're going to need statements from everyone involved." Through the station doors, more vehicles arrived. Black SUVs with federal plates. Men and women in suits carrying briefcases and credentials. The reckoning had begun. In the chaos that followed, certain things happened quickly. FBI agents took custody of Detective Nolan Sutter, reading him his rights as they escorted him to a waiting vehicle. His face was blank, the look of a man who had run out of options and knew it. Officer Trent Billups was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His badge and weapon were confiscated. His union representative was called. None of it would be enough to save him from what was coming. Sergeant Cass Widener, who had recommended escalating Keziah's detention to a terrorism response, sat in an interview room answering questions from DOJ Civil Rights Division attorneys. Officer Diana Martinez gave a statement that would later prove crucial. She was the only officer whose body camera had captured audio of Billups's assault, because she had managed to restart it after he turned it off. And Margot Kirby, the woman whose 911 call had started everything, was served with papers at 3 a.m. informing her that she was being investigated for filing a false police report under North Carolina law. But amidst all of this, certain things remained unresolved. In an evidence room that had been sealed as a crime scene, forensic technicians were examining the tampered device. It was dead, wiped clean, but the transmission logs from the DSS servers showed that a final burst of data had been sent before shutdown. That data was being analyzed in Virginia. It would take time to process, but when it was complete, it would provide a roadmap to everyone involved in the network's Charlotte operations, including someone whose identity was still protected by encryption. Someone inside the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Someone other than Sutter. Keziah learned about this at 4 a.m. during a secure briefing with Vickers and 2 DSS analysts who had flown in from D.C. The transmission logs show that your device received an external ping 43 minutes before your arrest. She frowned. External from where? An IP address traced to the Charlotte PD network. Someone inside the department knew you were in the area and flagged your presence. Sutter? Sutter wasn't on duty until after your detention. This came earlier. Someone saw you on traffic cameras or ran your plate, we're not sure, and sent an alert to the network, which is why they started evacuating before Sutter even made his call. Exactly. Sutter's call confirmed the threat, but he wasn't the original source. There's another player inside the department, someone with access to surveillance systems and network connections we haven't identified. Keziah absorbed this. A mole. Still active. Still protected. Billups? Possible, but unlikely. His record shows bias and brutality, but not the technical sophistication needed to access traffic cameras and route encrypted alerts. Widener? They're cyber crimes. Under investigation. But their background check shows no financial red flags, and their role tonight seems opportunistic rather than planned. Then who? The analyst pulled up a file on the tablet. We don't know yet, but whoever they are, they knew you were surveillance before you were arrested. They knew to alert the network, and they're still wearing a badge. Keziah looked at the screen, at the redacted communications and encrypted markers that pointed toward a ghost in the system. 14 months of work, 23 targets, 9 arrests, 14 escapes. And somewhere in this building, a traitor who had made it all possible. She was not done with Charlotte, not by a long way. Dawn broke over the city at 6:47 a.m., painting the skyline in shades of orange and pink that seemed mockingly peaceful after the night's events. Keziah stood outside the police station, breathing air that tasted like exhaust and humidity and freedom. The military convoy was still parked in the lot, but the urgency had drained away. Now it was just paperwork and process. Colonel Vickers approached her with 2 cups of coffee. Medical team cleared you. Minor injuries, nothing permanent. I've had worse. I know, I read your file. Vickers handed her a cup. You saved an ambassador in Nairobi. Took a bullet that was meant for him. Part of the job. The job tonight was supposed to be surveillance, observation, building a case. She gestured toward the police station. This wasn't the plan. No, it wasn't. The network is scattered. Vasquez and Okonjo-Thompson are gone. 14 targets in the wind. Vickers paused. Some people would call that a failure. Some people would be right. And yet 9 targets are in custody. Sutter is flipped. He'll cooperate to avoid the worst charges. The Charlotte PD is under federal microscope. DOJ is opening a pattern or practice investigation. Small victories. Sometimes small victories are what we get. Vickers drained her coffee. What's next for you? Keziah looked back at the station. Through the glass doors, she could see officers going about their morning routines, pretending that the world hadn't shifted on its axis while they slept. Someone inside that building tipped off the network. Someone other than Sutter. I need to find out who. That's not your case anymore. FBI has jurisdiction now. I know. Keziah, Vickers' voice carried warning. You've been through enough tonight. Take the win. Go home. Let other people handle the cleanup. Would you? Silence. No, I wouldn't. Vickers sighed. But I've been at this longer. I know when to push and when to step back. Then you also know that stepping back now means whoever is still inside gets away, gets to keep wearing the badge, gets to keep protecting the next network that moves into Charlotte. The FBI will find them. Maybe, eventually, after how many more women get trafficked through while they're filing paperwork and building cases? Vickers had no answer for that. Keziah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Message from D. Saw the news. Are you okay? She typed back, physically fine, operationally compromised, coming home soon. The response came immediately. Take your time. Do what you need to do. I'll be here. She stared at those words for a long moment. David had always understood, had always given her space, had always waited while she chased ghosts and fought battles that most people couldn't even see. Sometimes she wondered if she deserved that kind of patience. She pocketed the phone and turned back to Vickers. I need one thing before I leave. Name it. The personnel files for everyone who was on duty last night. Everyone with access to traffic cameras and network systems. I want to know who could have sent that alert. That's confidential department information. I can't just... You can request it under federal investigation protocols. And we both know that whoever tipped off the network is a national security threat, not just a local corruption problem. Vickers studied her for a long moment. You're not going to let this go. Would you? Another silence, then a small nod. I'll make the request. But Keziah, be careful. Whoever this is, they've been operating undetected for at least 14 months, maybe longer. They're smart, they're connected, and now they know you're looking for them. Good. Good? Scared people make mistakes, and I'm very good at exploiting mistakes. She walked toward the station parking lot, where her Tesla had been brought from Myers Park. The car was unscratched, small mercy, and Biscuit waited inside, having been retrieved from Gerald Forsyth by a thoughtful FBI agent who understood that sometimes the small kindnesses matter most. She opened the door, and the dog launched himself at her, tail wagging frantically, tongue seeking any exposed skin. I know, boy. I know. Long night. She settled into the driver's seat and started the engine. The screen lit up, showing 14 hours of Sentry Mode footage waiting for review. 14 hours of documentation. Every car that passed. Every person who approached. Every moment of her arrest captured in high definition from multiple angles. Evidence. Independent. Unimpeachable. She pulled out of the lot and turned toward the highway. The skyline receded in her rearview mirror, but the questions remained. Who had tipped off the network? Where had Vasquez and Okonjo-Thompson fled? And how many more women would suffer because tonight's operation had been compromised before it ever really began? This is just the beginning. Subscribe now, because Part 2 reveals who was really pulling the strings, and why Keziah's fight is far from over. The drive home took 47 minutes. She spent every second of it thinking about what she had missed. 14 months. She had been in Charlotte for 14 months, building relationships, gathering evidence, mapping the network's operations. She had photographed every visitor to the Myers Park house, had documented every transaction, had followed the money through shell companies and offshore accounts until she could trace the entire architecture of human misery. And someone had been watching her the entire time. Someone with access to police systems. Someone who could track her movements through traffic cameras. Someone who knew enough to trigger an evacuation before she could close the trap. She pulled into the parking garage of her South End apartment building and sat in the darkness, running scenarios. Sutter was the obvious answer, but Sutter didn't have the technical skills. He was muscle, not brains. A bagman collecting payments, not an architect designing systems. Widener had the skills, but no apparent motive. Their background was clean, their finances transparent, their career trajectory unexceptional. Someone else, then. Someone she hadn't identified. Someone still wearing the badge and collecting a paycheck while women disappeared into the network's machinery. She got out of the car, collected Biscuit, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Her apartment was exactly as she had left it 12 hours ago. Sparse. Temporary. A staging ground, not a home. Suitcase packed and ready by the door. Laptop on the desk, encrypted and air-gapped. Nothing personal on the walls. She poured water for Biscuit and coffee for herself, then sat down at the desk and opened the laptop. The files she needed were already downloading from DSS servers. Personnel records. Duty rosters. Network access logs. Everything she would need to build a profile of the mole. It would take days, maybe weeks. And in that time, the network would be rebuilding, finding new routes, recruiting new victims, continuing the work that had made its principals wealthy beyond imagining. 400 women a year. She started reading. 3 hours later, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Ms. Oduya? A male voice. Young. Nervous. Who is this? My name is Marcus Webb. I'm an analyst at the DSS Operations Center. I've been assigned to support your investigation. I don't need support. I need access. That's why I'm calling. We finished decrypting the final transmission from your device, the one that went out before the wipe. She sat up straighter. And? There's something you need to see. The ping that alerted the network, the one we traced to the Charlotte PD network, we found the original source. Who? A pause. The sound of keys clicking. It wasn't a person. It was an automated system. A monitoring algorithm that flagged your vehicle's license plate when it entered Myers Park and cross-referenced it against a watch list. A watch list? Maintained by who? That's the thing. The watch list isn't stored on Charlotte PD servers. It's external, hosted on a private server that mirrors certain police databases but isn't part of official records. Someone built a parallel surveillance system. Yes, and they've been using it to monitor federal investigators for at least 2 years. Your plate was flagged the moment you first drove into Myers Park 14 months ago. They've been tracking you ever since. Kezia felt cold despite the morning heat. How many other agents are on that watch list? We're still analyzing, but preliminary estimates suggest at least a dozen federal investigators across multiple agencies have been compromised through this system. And no one noticed? The algorithm is sophisticated. It doesn't trigger any official alerts or access logs. It just quietly watches and reports to an external server that we're still trying to locate. Who has the skills to build something like that? That's what we're trying to determine. But whoever it is, they have deep access to law enforcement systems, advanced programming capabilities, and resources that go way beyond what a single corrupt cop could manage. Kezia stared at the wall, processing implications that spread far beyond Charlotte. This isn't just a local trafficking network. No, ma'am. We think it's infrastructure, a service provided to multiple criminal organizations, helping them identify and evade federal investigations. And whoever runs it is still operating, still watching, and now they know you're onto them. She hung up without saying goodbye. The game had just gotten much bigger. and much more dangerous. Somewhere, on a private jet crossing the Atlantic, Victor Okonjo Thompson received a secure message on his encrypted phone. Odia survived, investigation continuing. Recommend complete reset of Charlotte operations and activation of Protocol 9. He read the message twice, then deleted it. Protocol 9. The nuclear option. Burn everything. Eliminate everyone who could testify. Rebuild from scratch in a different city with different faces. Expensive. Time-consuming. But necessary. He typed a response. Approved. Begin immediately. Then he closed his eyes and slept the sleep of the ruthless, dreaming of nothing at all. In Charlotte, Kezia Oduya stood at her window, watching the city wake up to a day that felt nothing like ordinary. She had come here to bring down a trafficking network. Instead, she had stumbled onto something much larger, a surveillance apparatus that protected criminals across the country, a mole still hiding in plain sight, a conspiracy that reached higher and deeper than anyone had imagined. The fight she thought she was finishing had only just begun, and somewhere out there, the people who had built this machine were already moving to protect it. She finished her coffee, opened her laptop, and got back to work. There would be no rest, no retreat, no surrender, only the hunt. And she was very, very good at hunting. The surveillance footage arrived at 9:47 a.m., 3 hours after Keziah had started digging. Marcus Webb had sent it through encrypted channels, 47 minutes of traffic camera recordings showing every vehicle that entered Myers Park on the night of her arrest. She watched it frame by frame, cataloging license plates, noting timestamps, building a picture of who had been where and when. At the 23:14 mark, she found it. A dark sedan, no front plate, windows tinted beyond legal limits. It had entered Myers Park from Providence Road, circled the block twice, then parked 3 houses down from the location she had been surveilling. The driver never got out. At 23:31, 6 minutes before Billups received the dispatch call about a suspicious individual, the sedan's interior light flickered briefly, someone using a phone or tablet. At 23:38, the car pulled away and disappeared toward uptown Charlotte. She ran the partial plate through federal databases. No match. Ran the vehicle description through DMV records. Thousands of possibilities, none definitive. But the timing was too precise to be coincidental. Someone had been watching her watch the house. Someone had triggered the 911 call. Someone had orchestrated her arrest from the shadows. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You're looking in the wrong direction." She stared at the screen, typed back, "Who is this?" No response. 3 minutes passed. 5. 10. Then, check the officer who didn't respond. She pulled up the dispatch logs from the night of her arrest. Unit Charlie 19, Billups. Unit Delta 7, Martinez. Both responded to the call. But there was a third unit listed, Unit Alpha 12. Acknowledged the dispatch at 21:34. Never arrived on scene. Officer assigned, Kenneth Yates. Badge 2, 847, 12 years on the force. Years. Transferred to Myers Park Patrol 6 months ago from downtown precinct. She searched his personnel file. Clean record. Commendations for community service. No disciplinary actions. No red flags. Too clean. She dug deeper. Financial records. Property ownership. Travel history. Nothing unusual until she checked his phone records against the timeline of network communications. At 21:32, 2 minutes before Margot Kirby's 911 call, Kenneth Yates had made a 47-second phone call to an unlisted number, the same unlisted number that appeared in Sutter's call logs, the same number that connected to a burner phone purchased with cash in the Cayman Islands. She had found her mole. 2 hours later, Kezia sat across from FBI Special Agent Carol Kim in a secure conference room at the Federal Building on West Trade Street. Kim was 43, Korean-American, with the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing and forgave less. She had led the FBI's Charlotte field office for 2 years and had a reputation for territorial aggression when it came to cases in her jurisdiction. "You're telling me one of Charlotte PD's most decorated patrol officers has been running counter-surveillance for a human trafficking network?" "The evidence supports that conclusion." Evidence you gathered while operating an unauthorized investigation on my turf. The investigation was authorized by the State Department. Your turf is irrelevant when it comes to federal operations. Kim's jaw tightened. DSS handles diplomatic security, passport fraud, embassy protection, not domestic trafficking networks. The network uses visa fraud as its primary intake mechanism. That falls squarely within DSS jurisdiction. And yet here you are, in my city, asking me to arrest one of the local police department's officers based on phone records and circumstantial timing. Kezia slid a folder across the table. The phone records establish communication between Yates and the network's operational contacts. The timing proves he triggered my arrest before Margot Kirby ever made her call. The traffic camera footage shows an unidentified vehicle conducting counter-surveillance in the same location where I was detained. She tapped the folder. Yates owns a 2019 Nissan Maxima, dark blue, tinted windows. No front plate because he reported it stolen 3 months ago and never replaced it. Kim opened the folder, read the first page, read the second. This is circumstantial. It's a foundation. Arrest him, execute a warrant on his residence and electronics, and I guarantee you'll find direct communication with the network. And if I'm wrong, then you've inconvenienced a decorated officer for a few hours. But if I'm right, and I am, you've just broken open a corruption case that goes far beyond one dirty cop. Kim studied her for a long moment. Why bring this to me? You could have taken it to DOJ. They're already investigating Charlotte PD. DOJ moves slow. By the time they build a case, Yates will have sanitized everything. You can move now, today, before he knows anyone is looking at him. And what do you get out of this? Access. I want to be there when you search his residence. I want to see what he's been hiding. Kim closed the folder. You're not FBI. You don't get to participate in our operations. I'm a federal agent with relevant expertise and direct knowledge of the network's operations. You can bring me as a consultant. Or I can have you escorted from the building and proceed without you. Keziah leaned back in her chair. You could, but then you'd be going in blind. You don't know what to look for. You don't know the network's communication protocols, their operational signatures, their methods of hiding evidence. She paused. I do. Kim's eyes narrowed. You're very confident for someone who just got arrested by local cops and nearly had a federal investigation blown. I'm confident because I've spent 14 months learning how these people think. I know their patterns, I know their weaknesses, and I know that Kenneth Yates is the key to everything that happened last night. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Kim stood. Be at Yates's residence at 2 p.m. Wear a vest. Stay behind my agents. She pointed at Kezia. And if anything goes wrong, I will personally ensure that your career ends before sundown. Understood. Get out of my office. The house at 4521 Brookdale Avenue was exactly what you would expect from a 12-year police veteran. Single story. Well-maintained lawn. American flag hanging from the porch. A Ford F-150 in the driveway with a Fraternal Order of Police sticker on the bumper. Nothing about it screamed corruption. That was the point. Kezia waited in an unmarked FBI vehicle 50 yards down the street, watching through binoculars as Kim's team approached the front door. 4 agents in tactical vests, 2 more covering the back entrance. A mobile command unit parked around the corner. The knock came at 2:03 p.m. No response. Another knock. Louder. The door opened. Kenneth Yates stood in the doorway wearing jeans and a Charlotte Hornets t-shirt, confusion on his face. Can I help you? Kim held up the warrant. Kenneth Yates, we have a federal warrant to search these premises in connection with an ongoing investigation. Please step outside and keep your hands visible. The confusion shifted to something else. Calculation. Assessment. What investigation? I'm a police officer. What is this about? Step outside, Mr. Yates. Now. He complied. Slowly. His eyes scanning the street, noting the vehicles, counting the agents, looking for escape routes, finding none. 2 agents escorted him to a waiting vehicle while the rest of the team entered the house. Kezia watched through her binoculars, tracking their movements through windows as they cleared each room. Her radio crackled. Kim's voice. "We're in. Starting the search now." "Copy. Looking for electronics, communication devices, any documentation of financial transactions." "I know how to search a house, Agent Oduya." Kezia smiled slightly and kept watching. 40 minutes later, Kim emerged from the front door, carrying an evidence bag. She walked to Kezia's vehicle and held up the bag so she could see its contents. A burner phone, identical to the ones used by the network's operatives. Found it in a hollowed-out book on his nightstand. Very creative. What's on it? We'll know more once our techs crack it, but preliminary scan shows text messages to at least 6 different numbers, including the one that Sutter called last night. Kezia felt something loosen in her chest. Validation. Proof. The beginning of real accountability. What about his computer? Encrypted. We're taking it back to the lab. Kim paused. There's something else. In his closet. A lockbox we had to cut open. What was inside? Photographs. Surveillance photographs. Kim's voice hardened. Of you. Taken over the past 14 months. Your apartment building. Your car. The coffee shop where you stop every morning. The loosening in Kezia's chest reversed. Tightened. He's been watching me. Since the day you arrived in Charlotte, apparently. There are notes on the back of each photo. Times. Dates. Patterns. Kim met her eyes. He was building a file on you, waiting for the right moment to move. And last night was that moment. Looks like it. The question is why then? Why not sooner? Kezia thought about the network's evacuation. 14 of 23 targets fleeing within hours of her arrest. The precision of it. The coordination. They were ready to leave anyway. My arrest wasn't just about stopping my investigation. It was about creating a distraction, drawing federal attention to Charlotte while the principals escaped. You were bait. I was a sacrifice. They burned Yates, burned Sutter, burned the entire Charlotte operation because they had something bigger to protect. What's bigger than a network that traffics 400 women a year? Kezia remembered what Marcus Webb had told her. The parallel surveillance system. The watch list tracking federal investigators across multiple agencies. The infrastructure. Not the network itself, but the system that protects it. That's what they're really hiding. Kim was quiet for a moment. That's above my pay grade. It's above everyone's pay grade, but someone has to start pulling threads. And you think you're that someone? Kezia watched as agents loaded evidence boxes into a waiting van. Yates sat in the back of a federal vehicle, hands cuffed, face blank. Just another fallen cop waiting for the system to process him. I think I'm the only one who's seen enough of the picture to know where to look next. Kim studied her. You're going to keep investigating, even after what happened last night, even knowing they've been watching you for over a year. Would you stop? I'm not the one they tried to kill. They didn't try to kill me. They tried to neutralize me. There's a difference. And now? Kezia turned to look at her. Now they've failed. And I'm very motivated to return the favor. The interrogation of Kenneth Yates began at 6 p.m. in a windowless room at the FBI field office. Kezia watched through one-way glass as Kim and her partner, Agent Derek Holloway, worked their subject. Classic good cop/bad cop routine, though both of them leaned more toward bad cop than good. Yates said nothing for the first hour, sat with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on a spot on the wall above their heads, mouth locked shut. Then Kim played the audio. It was a recording from his burner phone, a conversation from 3 weeks ago between Yates and an unidentified male voice. The DSS agent is getting too close. She photographed the Vasquez drop last Tuesday. I know, I've been monitoring her movements. We need to accelerate the timeline. Can you create an opportunity? I'll need a catalyst, something to justify local intervention. Use the HOA woman. She's called 911 before. She'll call again if prompted. And if that's not enough, then we move to Protocol 9. But that's expensive. Try the soft approach first. The recording ended. Kim leaned back in her chair. That's your voice, Officer Yates. And that's you conspiring to illegally detain a federal agent. Still nothing. The man you were talking to, we've identified him as a known associate of the Okonjo-Thompson organization. That makes this conspiracy to obstruct a federal investigation, aiding and abetting human trafficking, and probably a dozen other charges we haven't finished tallying. Silence. You're looking at 25 years minimum. Federal prison, no parole. The kind of place where ex-cops don't last long. Yates finally spoke. His voice was flat, emotionless. I want a lawyer. You can have a lawyer. But once that lawyer shows up, my offer disappears. What offer? Cooperation. You tell us everything. How the network operates, who's involved, where the infrastructure is located. And we recommend leniency. Maybe you serve 10 years instead of 25. Maybe you get protective custody instead of general population. Yates laughed. The sound was ugly in the small room. You think prison is what I'm afraid of? Then what? He leaned forward, and for the first time something other than blankness showed in his eyes. Fear. Real, genuine terror. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The network. It's not just trafficking. It's not just Charlotte. It's everywhere. Police departments, federal agencies, state governments. They have people in places you can't even imagine. Then help us take them down. You can't take them down. No one can. They've spent decades building this. Layers on layers. Cut off one head, 3 more grow back. Give us names. Give us locations. Let us try. Yates shook his head slowly. If I talk, I die. Not in prison. They have people there too. I die wherever I am, whenever they decide I'm a liability. He met Kim's eyes. That's the reality. That's what you're asking me to risk. And if you don't talk, then I take my chances with the legal system. Maybe I beat the charges. Maybe I serve my time quietly and hope they forget about me. He leaned back. Lawyer. Now. Kim stood, walked to the door, paused. You're protecting people who would kill you without a second thought. Is that really the hill you want to die on? It's the only hill I have. The door closed behind her. In the observation room, Kezia watched Yates slump in his chair. The bravado was gone. What remained was a broken man who had made choices that left him with no good options. She understood that kind of desperation, had seen it before in others who had traded their integrity for money or safety or the illusion of power. But understanding didn't mean sympathy. Yates had helped traffic hundreds of women, had watched Kezia for 14 months, waiting for the chance to destroy her, had participated in a system designed to profit from human suffering. Whatever happened to him, he had earned it. Kim entered the observation room, frustration evident in every line of her body. He's not going to flip. No, he's more afraid of them than he is of us. Which tells us something about who we're dealing with. Kezia nodded. They've built a culture of terror. Everyone involved knows the consequences of betrayal. So how do we break it? We don't. Not directly. She turned to face Kim. But fear works both ways. Right now, they're afraid too. The Charlotte operation is blown. Sutter is in custody. Yates is in custody. The surveillance system has been exposed. They're scrambling. They're panicking. And panicked people make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Kezia thought about the encrypted message that Okonjo-Thompson had sent from his private jet. Protocol 9. Burn everything. Eliminate everyone. They're going to start cleaning up, removing loose ends. Destroying evidence. She paused. And people. Kim's expression sharpened. You think they'll try to take out Yates? In federal custody? I think they'll try to take out anyone who can connect them to the operation. Sutter, Yates, maybe others we haven't identified yet. We can increase security and do that, but also watch for patterns, unexpected deaths, disappearances, accidents that seem too convenient. Kezia met her eyes. Whoever is running this has done it before. They know how to make problems go away. Kim was quiet for a moment. You've seen this before. This kind of organization. Once. In West Africa. A network that moved weapons instead of people, but the structure was similar. Cells, insulation, fear-based loyalty. How did you take it down? Kezia remembered the warehouse in Lagos, the explosion that had killed 3 of her colleagues, the informant who had betrayed them for reasons that died with him. We didn't, not completely. We disrupted their operations, arrested some key players, but the infrastructure survived, rebuilt itself somewhere else with different faces. That's not encouraging. It's realistic. These systems are resilient because they're designed to be. You cut off one part, the rest adapts and continues. So what's the point? Why keep fighting if we can't win? Kezia looked through the glass at Yates, who sat alone in the interrogation room, staring at nothing. Because every disruption matters. Every arrest. Every rescue. Every woman who doesn't get trafficked because we made it harder, more expensive, more dangerous to operate. She turned back to Kim. We can't win, but we can make them bleed. The next 48 hours blurred together in a haze of briefings, strategy sessions, and sleepless nights. DOJ Civil Rights Division formally opened its pattern or practice investigation into Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD, citing the arrests of Sutter and Yates as evidence of systemic corruption. FBI expanded its inquiry to include the parallel surveillance system, issuing subpoenas for server records from 6 different hosting companies across 4 countries. The State Department scrambled to assess how many other DSS operations might have been compromised by the watch list that had tracked Kezia's movements. And somewhere in Europe, Victor Okonjo-Thompson continued his journey beyond the reach of American law enforcement, protected by money and connections, and a network of allies who owed their freedom to his discretion. Kezia worked from a secure office at the Federal Building, coordinating with analysts in Virginia and field agents across the Southeast. The picture that emerged was worse than anyone had anticipated. The trafficking network had been operating for at least 15 years, moving through different cities as law enforcement pressure increased or decreased. Charlotte was just the latest hub. Before that, it had been Atlanta, then Nashville, then Birmingham. Each time authorities got too close, the operation would evacuate, rebuild somewhere else, and continue. The surveillance infrastructure was even older. Webb's team traced its origins to a consulting firm founded in 2008, ostensibly providing security services to private clients. In reality, it had been building a comprehensive database of federal investigators, their assignments, their methods, their vulnerabilities. At least 37 agents across multiple agencies had been tracked over the past decade. 12 had been neutralized through various means: arrests on fabricated charges, professional discrediting, transfers to harmless positions, or in 3 cases, deaths that had been ruled accidental. Kezia was supposed to be number 13. She read the files, memorized the names of the fallen, promised herself that their sacrifices would not be forgotten. On the 3rd morning after Yates's arrest, her phone rang at 5:47 a.m. Oduya. Agent Oduya, this is Marcus Webb. We found something. She sat up in bed, instantly alert. What? The server hosting the surveillance infrastructure. We traced it to a data center in Estonia, but the billing records lead back to a shell company in Delaware. Delaware. Same jurisdiction as the network's financial holdings. Exactly. And the registered agent for that shell company? A law firm in Wilmington that specializes in corporate privacy. What's the firm? Hadley, Marcus, and Webb. She blinked. Webb? Like your name? No relation. But that's not the interesting part. A pause. The founding partner, Charles Hadley, served as Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Delaware from 1998 to 2006. He was a federal prosecutor. And now he runs a firm that helps criminal organizations hide their assets and protect their infrastructure from federal investigation. Kezia felt the pieces clicking together. a former prosecutor who knew exactly how federal investigations worked, who understood the vulnerabilities, the blind spots, the ways to evade detection. He's the architect. We can't prove that yet, but he's definitely involved at a high level. Where is he now? Wilmington. He still goes into the office every day, according to our surveillance. You're watching him? Started yesterday after we made the connection. So far, nothing unusual. He lives alone, drives a Mercedes, plays golf on Wednesdays and Saturdays. What about his communications? Encrypted. We'd need a warrant to access them, and we don't have enough for probable cause yet. Kezia thought for a moment. What if he came to us? Excuse me? The network is panicking. They've lost their Charlotte operation. They know federal investigators are digging into their infrastructure. If Hadley is the architect, he's feeling the pressure too. So we increase the pressure. Make him think we know more than we do. Force him to make a move. That's dangerous. If he suspects we're onto him, he might accelerate the cleanup. More people could get hurt. People are already getting hurt. Every day the network operates, more women disappear into it. She paused. I'm not willing to wait for perfect evidence while that continues. Webb was quiet for a long moment. What do you need? Access to the forensic data from Yates's devices. I want to know everything he knew about the infrastructure. I can get you that. And a meeting with Agent Kim. If we're going to pressure Hadley, we need FBI resources. I'll set it up. One more thing. Yes? The 3 agents who died. The ones ruled accidental. I want their full case files. Those are closed investigations. Accessing them would require... I know what it would require. Do it anyway. Another pause. Agent Oduya, are you sure about this? You're already a target. Digging into their past operations will only make you a bigger one. Kezia looked out the window at the Charlotte skyline, still dark in the pre-dawn hours. I'm already the biggest target they have. Might as well make it count. The meeting with Kim happened at 10 a.m. in a secure conference room. Kezia laid out her theory. Charles Hadley as the architect of the surveillance infrastructure, the law firm as a hub for network operations, the pattern of deceased agents that suggested a systematic campaign to eliminate threats. Kim listened without interrupting. When Kezia finished, she leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. You're describing a conspiracy that spans decades, involves former federal prosecutors, and has resulted in multiple deaths that were never recognized as murders. Yes. And you want me to help you prove it by pressuring a man we can't directly connect to any specific crime. I want you to help me create the conditions for him to make a mistake. How? Kezia pulled out a folder. Yates's communications show that the network has a regular check-in protocol. Every 72 hours, operatives confirm their status through encrypted channels. If they miss a check-in, the system assumes they're compromised. Yates has been in custody for 3 days, which means he missed his check-in yesterday. The network knows something is wrong. They're waiting to see what happens next. And? We give them something to react to. A press conference. Announce that we've arrested 2 Charlotte PD officers in connection with a major federal investigation. Mention the surveillance infrastructure. Make it clear we're following the money. That would be true. And it would terrify Hadley. He spent 15 years building something that was supposed to be invisible. Suddenly, federal agencies are talking about it on national news. Kim shook her head slowly. Press conferences require authorization from D.C. Media strategy has to be approved by public affairs. This isn't something I can just decide to do. Then get authorization. Tell them it's part of the investigation strategy. It could backfire. If we spook Hadley before we have enough evidence, he'll destroy everything. We'll never prove the connection. He's already destroying evidence. Every hour we wait, more records disappear, more witnesses go silent, more women get trafficked. Kezia leaned forward. We have a window. Yates's arrest created chaos in their organization. If we don't act now, they'll stabilize, and we'll lose our chance. Kim studied her for a long moment. You really believe this will work? I believe it's our best option. And if Hadley doesn't react? If he just goes dark and waits us out? Then we'll have lost nothing. But if he panics, if he tries to run or communicate with his contacts or move assets, we'll have something we can act on. Kim picked up her phone. I'll make some calls, but I'm not promising anything. That's all I'm asking. The press conference happened at 4 p.m. the following day. FBI Director's Representative, DOJ spokesperson, Charlotte Chief of Police, looking deeply uncomfortable as he stood beside the people investigating his department. The announcement was carefully worded. 2 officers arrested in connection with a major human trafficking investigation. Evidence of corruption at multiple levels. Ongoing inquiry into surveillance infrastructure used to monitor federal investigators. No names beyond Sutter and Yates. No specific accusations against the law firm in Delaware. Just enough information to signal that the investigation was expanding, that more arrests were possible, that the federal government was taking this seriously. Kezia watched from the federal building, surrounded by agents monitoring communication channels for any reaction. At 4:47 p.m., they got an encrypted message, routed through 17 different servers before reaching its destination, sent from an IP address in Wilmington, Delaware. Protocol 9 confirmed. All principals evacuate immediately. Burn everything. Webb called her 30 seconds later. He's moving. Hadley left his office 10 minutes ago, driving toward the airport. Is there a flight plan filed? Private charter to Toronto. Departure in 90 minutes. We can't let him leave. We don't have grounds to stop him. He hasn't been charged with anything. He just sent an order to destroy evidence. That's obstruction. We can't prove he sent it. The message was anonymous. Kezia closed her eyes, thinking fast. The IP address, can you trace it to his office? It matches the firm's network, but that's not enough for an arrest. What about the recipient, who received the Protocol 9 order? Multiple addresses, we're still decrypting them. Find one in the U.S., someone we can arrest right now, someone who can confirm Hadley's involvement. Keys clicked rapidly on Webb's end. Got one. Miami. The message was received by a burner phone registered to a shell company linked to the network's financial operations. Who has it? According to our surveillance, a man named Ricardo Vasquez. Kezia's breath caught. Vasquez? He's one of the principals. He's supposed to be in Europe. Apparently not. Our records show he entered Miami 3 days ago on a false passport. Why would he come back to the U.S.? I don't know, but if we can arrest him, we can flip him. He's not a true believer like Yates. He's a businessman. If he thinks cooperating is his best option, he'll take it. I'll contact the Miami field office. They can have agents at his location within 30 minutes. Do it. And Webb, make sure they understand who they're dealing with. Vasquez is dangerous. Understood. The line went dead. Kezia turned to Kim, who had been listening from across the room. Vasquez is in Miami. If we can arrest him before Hadley gets out of the country, we might have leverage. Kim was already moving. I'll coordinate with Miami. You stay here and monitor communications. I should be there. You should be exactly where you are. You're too valuable to risk on a field operation right now. Kim paused at the door. Trust the system, Agent Oduya. Let the teams do their jobs. The door closed behind her. Kezia stood alone in the command center, watching screens filled with data and intercepts and the digital footprints of people who had built an empire on human misery. Trust the system that had failed those 37 agents, the system that had let this network operate for 15 years, the system that was always one step behind, always reacting instead of preventing. She trusted herself. That would have to be enough. The Miami operation went wrong at 7:23 p.m. Kezia heard it happen in real time through the command center's communication links. Agents approaching the safe house. Vasquez spotted through a window. Entry team stacking up. Then gunfire. 3 bursts. A scream. More shots. Then silence. The radio crackled. Agent down! We have an agent down! Suspect fleeing through the back. Kezia's hands gripped the edge of the console. She could hear the chaos, shouting, footsteps, the distant wail of sirens approaching. Suspect is in a black SUV heading north on Biscayne Boulevard. All units pursue. More radio traffic. A chase through Miami streets. Vasquez was running, trying to reach somewhere. The airport, a secondary safe house, a boat that could take him into international waters. At 7:41 p.m., the pursuit ended. Vasquez's SUV crashed into a concrete barrier at 90 miles per hour. The vehicle flipped twice before coming to rest upside down in a drainage ditch. By the time agents reached it, Vasquez was dead. Massive trauma from the crash. Nothing suspicious about the cause, except Kezia didn't believe in coincidences. She pulled up the traffic camera footage from the pursuit, watched it frame by frame. Vasquez's SUV weaving through traffic, agents in pursuit behind him. At the 7:39 mark, she saw it. Vasquez's head jerked suddenly to the right, as if something had surprised him. The SUV swerved wildly, then accelerated directly toward the barrier. She rewound, watched again. Slower. There. A flash from the window of a building overlooking the boulevard. Brief, easily missed. A muzzle flash. She enhanced the image. The building was a parking garage, 5th level, perfect sightline to the road below. Someone had shot Vasquez, made it look like a crash, eliminated a principal who had been about to fall into federal custody. Protocol 9 wasn't just about destroying evidence. It was about destroying people. She called Webb. The crash was staged. Vasquez was shot from a parking garage overlooking the pursuit route. You're certain? I have footage of the muzzle flash. Someone knew exactly where he would be and when. That means someone had access to our pursuit communications. The implication hung in the air. There's a mole in the FBI, Keziah said quietly. Someone feeding information to the network in real time. That's a serious accusation. It's the only explanation. Vasquez was moving too fast, making too many right turns. He was being guided. Someone was telling him where our units were. If you're right, if I'm right, then everyone we've talked to, every plan we've made, every move we've considered, they know about it. She paused, including this conversation. Silence. What do we do? We find the mole, before they find us. The next 12 hours were the longest of Kezia's life. She stopped using official communication channels, switched to personal encrypted devices that weren't connected to any federal network, trusted only the people she had personally vetted. That list was very short. Webb was on it. Kim, maybe. The rest of the FBI was compromised until proven otherwise. She worked through the night, analyzing personnel files, cross-referencing access logs, looking for the pattern that would reveal the traitor. At 3 a.m., she found it. Agent Derek Holloway, Kim's partner. The man who had been in the room during Yates's interrogation. The man who had helped coordinate the Miami operation. His bank records showed a deposit of $50,000 3 weeks ago, routed through a shell company in Delaware, the same shell company that paid Hadley's law firm. He had been on the network's payroll for at least that long, probably longer. She stared at the evidence, feeling sick. Holloway had been in every briefing, had heard every strategy, had access to every communication about the investigation, and he had been feeding it all to the people they were trying to catch. She needed to tell Kim. But how? If she used official channels, Holloway would know. If she approached Kim directly, Holloway might be watching. She needed a way to communicate that couldn't be intercepted. An idea formed. Risky, but the only option she could see. She picked up her personal phone and called a number she hadn't dialed in months. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. Hello? David, I need your help. 2 hours later, a man in a Georgetown University sweatshirt walked into the Charlotte FBI field office and asked to see Agent Carol Kim regarding a personal matter. David Monroe, Kezia's husband, deputy director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, was escorted to a conference room where Kim met him 5 minutes later. Mr. Monroe, I'm Agent Kim. What can I do for you? He handed her a folded piece of paper. "My wife asked me to deliver this. She said you'd understand." Kim unfolded the paper, read the single line written in Kezia's handwriting. "Holloway is the mole. Check his bank records. Delaware Shell Company. Don't react." Kim's expression didn't change. Years of training kept her face neutral even as her mind processed the betrayal. "Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Please tell your wife I received her message. She also asked me to tell you, the dead agent from the Miami operation. Check who assigned him to the pursuit team." Kim nodded slowly. "I understand." David left without another word. Kim waited until she was alone, then pulled up the assignment roster for the Miami operation. The agent who had been killed, Marcus Torres, 12 years with the Bureau, had been added to the pursuit team at the last minute by Derek Holloway. Torres had been positioned directly in Vasquez's escape route, had been the first to engage when Vasquez fled, had taken 3 bullets to the chest before backup could arrive. Holloway hadn't just been feeding information to the network. He had been actively helping them eliminate threats, including setting up a fellow agent to die. Kim's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. Not with fear, with rage. She dialed a number that bypassed normal channels and connected directly to the Office of Professional Responsibility, the FBI's Internal Affairs Division. "This is Special Agent Carol Kim, Charlotte Field Office. I need to report a potential insider threat." The arrest of Derek Holloway happened at 6:47 a.m., executed by agents from the Washington Field Office, who had been briefed without his knowledge. He was taken into custody at his home still in pajamas, still convinced that his betrayal had gone undetected. The look on his face when he saw the handcuffs told Kezia everything she needed to know about how secure he had felt in his treachery. Unlike Yates, Holloway talked. He talked because he knew that silence meant death. The network had killed Vasquez for being a liability. They would kill him too if given the chance. His only hope was federal protection. And federal protection required cooperation. The debriefing lasted 16 hours. Holloway had been recruited 5 years ago, during a difficult period when gambling debts had made him vulnerable to approach. The first payment had been small, just enough to clear his immediate problems. The next payments had been larger, and with each one, he had sunk deeper into complicity. He didn't know everything about the network, didn't know the identities of all the principals, but he knew how the surveillance infrastructure worked, how the communication protocols operated, how the organization maintained its secrecy. Most importantly, he knew where Charles Hadley had gone, not Toronto. The flight plan had been a decoy. Hadley was in Costa Rica at a compound outside San Jose that served as one of the network's emergency retreats, a place designed to resist extradition with private security, hardened communications, and enough resources to sustain operations indefinitely. Kezia reviewed the intelligence with Kim in a secure room at the federal building. Costa Rica has an extradition treaty with the United States for most crimes, but Hadley hasn't been charged with anything yet. We can't request extradition without formal charges. Then charge him. With what? The evidence we have is circumstantial. The IP address, the shell company, the timing of the evacuation order. It points to him, but it doesn't prove he personally committed any crime. Kezia felt frustration building. He built the infrastructure that's protected human traffickers for 15 years. He ordered the destruction of evidence. He's directly responsible for the deaths of at least 3 federal agents. I believe you, but believing isn't the same as proving in court. Kim shook her head. We need more, something that directly connects him to specific criminal acts. Holloway's testimony is hearsay. He never met Hadley directly. Everything he knows came through intermediaries. The financial records show payments from shell companies that Hadley administered. His lawyers will argue he was just providing legal services without knowledge of the underlying crimes. So he just gets away with it? Sits in Costa Rica drinking cocktails while the network rebuilds somewhere else? Kim was quiet for a moment. There might be another way. What? Holloway mentioned that the network keeps records, not digital, Too risky. Physical documents, stored at secure locations that prove who received payments and when. Where? He doesn't know exactly, but he knows one thing. Hadley personally maintains a copy. Insurance, in case any of the principals try to betray him. Kezia's mind raced. If those records are in Costa Rica, then we need someone on the ground to find them. CIA, DA? They don't operate domestically, and this is fundamentally a domestic criminal case. International cooperation would take months to arrange. Kezia met her eyes. You're talking about me. I'm talking about an unofficial operation with no federal sanction, no backup, and no legal authority to act on foreign soil. Kim paused. The kind of operation that could end your career if it goes wrong. Or end the network if it goes right. Yes. Kezia thought about the files she had read. The 37 agents who had been tracked. The 12 who had been neutralized. The 3 who had died. She thought about the 400 women who disappeared into the network every year. The ones who were never found. The ones whose families never got answers. She thought about what it meant to be a federal agent, to swear an oath to protect and defend, to pursue justice even when the system made it hard, to accept risk because someone had to. How do I get to Costa Rica? Kim handed her a folder. Private charter leaves from an airfield in Gastonia at midnight. You'll be met at the San Jose airport by a local contact, former DEA, now works private security. He knows the area and has no love for the network after they killed his partner 3 years ago. You planned this before you talked to me. I suspected you'd say yes. What if I'd said no? Kim shrugged. Then I would have found someone else. But honestly, you're the best chance we have. You've been inside this investigation longer than anyone. You know the network's patterns, and you have more motivation than anyone else to see it through. Kezia looked at the folder. Flight details, contact information, satellite images of Hadley's compound. What about David? Does he know? He knows enough. He's the one who suggested the charter company. It's run by a friend of his from his army days. Of course it is. She closed the folder and stood. I need to make some calls. Pack a bag. Kezia. Kim's voice stopped her at the door. If this goes wrong, there's nothing I can do to help you. You'll be operating without official sanction in a foreign country. Any laws you break, any incidents that occur, you're on your own. I understand. Do you? Because if Hadley's security catches you, they won't call the police. They'll make you disappear. Kezia turned to face her. Then I'd better not get caught. The flight to Costa Rica took 6 hours. Kezia spent most of it reviewing the intelligence package Kim had provided. Satellite imagery of the compound, security assessments based on commercial observation, known associates of Hadley who might be present. The compound was located in the mountains above San Jose, accessible by a single road that wound through coffee plantations and dense forest. The main house was surrounded by a wall topped with cameras and motion sensors. At least 6 security personnel on site at any given time. Not impossible, but not easy. Her contact met her at the airport at 8 a.m. local time. Eduardo Reyes, 53, with the weathered face and careful eyes of a man who had spent decades working in dangerous places. He said nothing as he led her to a battered Toyota Land Cruiser in the parking lot. Only when they were moving through city traffic did he speak. You're either very brave or very stupid. Why not both? He laughed, a short, humorless sound. The compound has been there for 8 years. DEA tried to build a case twice. Both times the operation was compromised before we could move. Informants disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories. Evidence got lost. That was before we knew about the surveillance infrastructure. And knowing about it helps how? We're not using any official channels, no federal communications, no coordination with local authorities. Just you and me. Against 6 armed guards and a fortified compound. Against one man who has documents we need. She pulled out the satellite images. I'm not trying to assault the place. I just need to get in, find the records, and get out. Reyes glanced at the images while keeping one eye on the road. The main house has a study on the second floor, west side. Windows are reinforced but not barred. You've been watching the compound. Since my partner died. Every day I could. Waiting for an opportunity. Why didn't you take one? Because going in alone would be suicide, and I couldn't find anyone else willing to help. He looked at her. Until now. They drove in silence for a while, climbing into the mountains as the city fell away behind them. What's your plan? Reyes finally asked. Security shift change happens at 2 a.m. 4 guards rotate off, 4 rotate on. During the transition, coverage is reduced. You want to go in during the change? I want to go in before it, at 1:30. Most of the day shift will be tired, thinking about going home. The night shift won't be fully alert yet. And if they catch you? Then I hope you're in position to create a distraction. What kind of distraction? She handed him a small device, a remote detonator linked to a charge she had assembled during the flight. Something loud, on the east side of the property. Draw them away from the house long enough for me to get what I need. Reyes turned the detonator over in his hands. You came prepared. I've done this before. In Costa Rica? In places where getting caught meant worse than prison. He nodded slowly. Okay, we do it tonight. But if something goes wrong, then you leave. Get out of the country. Make sure the information about the compound reaches FBI, even if I don't. That's not how partners work. We're not partners. We're two people who want the same thing and are willing to take risks to get it. He smiled slightly, the first genuine expression she had seen from him. Close enough. The hours until midnight passed slowly. They parked at an abandoned farm 2 kilometers from the compound and waited. Kezia reviewed the layout one more time, memorizing entry points, emergency exits, the location of the study where Hadley's records were most likely kept. At midnight, they moved. The approach took 45 minutes, following a creek bed that ran parallel to the access road. The jungle was thick and loud with night sounds, insects, birds, the distant bark of dogs from a neighboring farm. At 1:15 a.m., they reached the perimeter wall. Kezia found the spot she had identified from the satellite images, a section of wall where a large tree provided cover from the cameras. She scaled the tree, crossed to the wall on a thick branch, and dropped silently into the compound's garden. Reyes remained outside, positioned near the east fence with the detonator in his hand. She moved through the garden in a low crouch, staying in shadows. The main house loomed ahead, most windows dark. A guard patrolled the front entrance, but his pattern was predictable. 10 steps left, pause. 10 steps right, pause. She timed her approach to coincide with his rightward movement and reached the west wall of the house without being seen. The study window was 12 feet up. She had brought a compact grappling device, a tool she had used dozens of times in her career. It caught the window frame on the first throw. She climbed. The window was reinforced but not locked. Why would it be? The compound had walls, guards, cameras. No one was supposed to get this far. She slid it open and entered the study. The room was exactly as she had expected from the surveillance photos. Expensive furniture, shelves lined with books, a large desk facing the window, and a safe built into the wall behind the desk. She approached carefully, checking for alarms, for pressure sensors, for any sign that Hadley had anticipated an intrusion. Nothing. The arrogance of someone who believed his security was impenetrable. The safe was a commercial model, expensive but not military grade. She had tools for this too. Within 4 minutes, she had it open. Inside, stacks of documents, financial records, names, dates, amounts. She photographed everything with a camera designed for low-light conditions, capturing page after page of evidence that would connect Hadley to every crime the network had committed. At 1:47 a.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. She froze, closed the safe silently, moved behind the heavy curtains near the window. The door opened. Light spilled in from the hallway. A man entered, not a guard, someone older, dressed in a bathrobe. Gray hair, soft features, the kind of face that wouldn't look out of place in a law firm or a country club. Charles Hadley. He walked to his desk and sat down heavily, pulled out a bottle of whiskey and a glass, poured himself a drink with hands that trembled slightly. Kezia held her breath. She was 6 feet away from the man who had built the infrastructure that protected human traffickers, that had killed federal agents, that had allowed an empire of suffering to flourish for 15 years. 6 feet away with a weapon on her hip. She could end it. Here. Now. One shot and the architect would be gone. But that wasn't justice. That was vengeance. And vengeance wouldn't bring down the network, wouldn't free the women still trapped in it, wouldn't prevent the next organization from rising to take its place. She needed Hadley alive, needed him in custody, needed his testimony to complete the case against everyone else. She stayed hidden. Hadley drank, stared at the wall, mumbled something she couldn't quite hear. Then his phone rang. He answered it, listened. His face went pale. How did they find out about Holloway? He was supposed to be secure. Pause. Protocol 9 should have prevented this. Pause. I don't care about the cost. If they have Holloway's testimony, they have everything. Another long pause. Then we accelerate. Clean up everyone who can connect us to Charlotte. Everyone. His voice hardened. Yes, including her. Especially her. She's been a problem since day one. Find her and make it permanent. He hung up. Kezia's blood ran cold. They knew about Holloway. They were cleaning up loose ends. And her could only mean one person. Hadley stood, suddenly energized. He walked to the safe, opened it, and began removing documents. He was going to destroy them. She made her decision in a fraction of a second. Stop. Hadley spun around. His eyes went wide when he saw her emerge from behind the curtains. How did you— Charles Hadley, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, obstruction of justice, and the murder of federal agents. His shock faded, replaced by something colder. You have no authority here. This is Costa Rica. You're nothing but a trespasser. I have photographs of every document in that safe. Even if you destroy them now, the evidence exists. Photographs prove nothing without chain of custody. Any lawyer could have them thrown out. Maybe. But combined with Holloway's testimony and the financial records we've already seized, there'll be more than enough to convince a Costa Rican court to approve your extradition. His face went white. Extradition takes years. I have resources, connections. You have a network that's collapsing around you. Vasquez is dead. Sutter is in custody. Holloway is cooperating. The infrastructure you spent 15 years building is being dismantled piece by piece. She stepped closer. It's over, Hadley. The only question is whether you cooperate and maybe see the outside of a prison cell before you die, or whether you fight and spend the rest of your life wondering why you didn't take the deal when you had the chance. Hadley stared at her. The calculations were visible on his face. Options, possibilities, escape routes. Then his hand moved toward a button under his desk. She was faster. The tackle drove him backward, away from the desk. They hit the floor hard, struggling. Hadley was older and softer, but desperation gave him strength. His hand found a letter opener on the floor. He swung it toward her face. She caught his wrist, twisted, heard bone crack. He screamed. Footsteps in the hallway, guards responding to the noise. She pulled the detonator from her pocket and pressed the button. The explosion on the east side of the compound was exactly as loud as she had hoped. Shouts of alarm, running feet, moving away from the house, toward the disturbance. She dragged Hadley to his feet, his broken wrist hanging useless at his side. Move. You'll never get out of here. My men will. Your men are busy, and you're coming with me. She forced him toward the window. The grappling line was still in place. Not ideal for descending with a prisoner, but she didn't have options. She went first, controlling his descent with one hand, her weapon in the other. They hit the ground just as the first guard rounded the corner of the house. Gunfire. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. She returned fire. 3 shots. Center mass. The guard went down. More shouts. More footsteps. Time was up. She ran, dragging Hadley with her, toward the wall. The tree was still there, the branch still accessible. Getting him over was harder than getting herself in. He fought, despite the broken wrist. She hit him once, hard, across the jaw. He went limp. She hauled his unconscious body over the wall and dropped into the jungle beyond. Reyes was waiting with the Land Cruiser. Problems? Complications. Go. They drove through the night, down mountain roads toward the coast. Hadley regained consciousness somewhere around 4 a.m. and spent the next hour alternating between threats and pleas. Kezia ignored both. At 6 a.m., they reached a private airstrip near Limon. A charter plane was waiting, arranged by David through contacts that didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. 12 hours later, Kezia Oduya walked into the FBI field office in Charlotte with Charles Hadley in custody and a camera full of evidence that would dismantle the network from the inside. The aftermath took months. Hadley, facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of spending his remaining years in federal prison, eventually cooperated. His testimony led to the arrests of 17 additional individuals across 6 states, including 3 more law enforcement officers who had been on the network's payroll. Victor Okonjo-Thompson was apprehended by Interpol in Monaco and extradited to the United States, where he faced charges under the RICO Act that carried a potential sentence of life in prison. The surveillance infrastructure was dismantled server by server, with help from international partners who had been equally alarmed by its scope and sophistication. DOJ completed its pattern or practice investigation of Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD and imposed a consent decree requiring federal monitoring for 5 years. And the women, the 400 women a year who had been the network's product and its victims, began receiving justice. Some were found and freed. Others were never recovered. But every arrest, every conviction, every document seized made it harder for the next organization to fill the void. Kezia returned to Washington 3 months after the Costa Rica operation. David was waiting at the airport, the same quiet patience in his eyes that had sustained her through 14 months of undercover work and the chaos that followed. "You okay?" "Getting there. The doctors say you need rest. The director says you deserve a medal. I say you need about 6 months of doing nothing more dangerous than choosing what to have for dinner." She smiled. "I could handle that." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. The network was down, but others existed. The infrastructure was dismantled, but similar systems were being built elsewhere. The fight against human trafficking, against corruption, against the exploitation of the vulnerable, that fight never ended. It just found new fronts. For now, though, she would rest, would heal, would remember why she did this work and who she did it for. The women in the files, the agents who had fallen, the victims who deserved someone willing to take risks on their behalf. She thought about Margot Kirby, who had started everything with a single phone call fueled by prejudice and fear. Margot had faced charges, public humiliation, the loss of her comfortable position in a community that no longer wanted her, a small consequence for a small woman who had caused enormous harm without ever understanding what she had set in motion. She thought about Billups, who was facing trial for civil rights violations and would likely serve time in a federal prison, surrounded by people who knew exactly what he had done and who he had done it to. She thought about Sutter and Yates and Holloway, men who had taken oaths to protect and serve and had betrayed those oaths for money. Their careers were over. Their freedom was gone. Their names would be synonymous with corruption for as long as anyone remembered them. And she thought about the women who were still out there, the ones who hadn't been saved, the ones who were being trafficked right now, in different cities, by different networks, while she sat in an airport thinking about justice. The fight never ended, but for today, she could go home, could hold her husband, could sleep in her own bed for the first time in over a year. Tomorrow, or next week, or next month, there would be another case, another network, Another reason to put everything on the line. For now, she was just Kezia Oduya. Survivor. Federal agent. A woman who had looked into the abyss and made the abyss look away first. David took her hand as they walked to the car. Ready to go home? She squeezed his fingers. Yeah, I think I am. The Washington skyline glittered in the distance as they drove, a city full of power and secrets, and the never-ending struggle between those who built systems of exploitation and those who fought to tear them down. Kezia watched it pass and felt, for the first time in a very long time, something that might have been peace. But peace, like victory, was always temporary. Somewhere in the world, someone was already building the next network, already recruiting the next corrupt cops, already targeting the next vulnerable women. And when that happened, Kezia Oduya would be ready.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.